Welcome to Sweeter Than Honey. Today's daily devotion is from Genesis 14. Genesis 14 is Abram at war. Abram, remember, had simply come to a place where he and Lot had too many possessions, too many sheep and cattle, and they had to split ways because the valley could not host both of them and their combined possessions. And Abram, almost feeling sorry for himself, feeling like a failure because of a failure that had taken place in Egypt, Abram gives deference and first choice to Lot, almost as if he's assuming that from this point on, because of his failure, Lot is going to be the upper hand in the covenantal relationship with the Lord. This chapter seems to correct that covenantal power balance, because we are introduced to a mysterious character. We see a rescue of Lot, and those are the two major events of chapter 14. There is the rescue of Lot, and there is the introduction of a mysterious character named Melchizedek, who blesses Abram and sets a prefigure to Christ that will come back to us unexpectedly, perhaps, in Hebrews chapter 7. With all of that said, as you read the chapter, there are five quick paragraphs for the chapter. The first paragraph is an introduction of the tribal war that would take place in verses 1 through 7. And then Lot is captured as a part of those ongoing tribal wars in verses 8 through 12. 1 through 7, the tribal wars are introduced. Lot is taken captive in 8 through 12. Then Abram sets out with his men and rescues Lot from verses 13 through 16. Abram then is blessed by this mysterious Melchizedek character in 17 through 20 and 21 through 24. Abram not only releases the king of Sodom, but refuses any kind of ransom or reward, so that it could not be said that this pagan king had helped in Abram's success. Now, there are a lot of names here at the beginning. Let me tell you how, when you're reading publicly, when you're reading out loud, and you come across these difficult names, you just look at it, say it quickly and clearly, however it seems best to you, and very few people are going to argue with the pronunciation of it. But a bunch of kings and a bunch of towns are mentioned in verses 1 through 12. The main idea that happens is that in the midst of these tribal wars, these eastern kings come into the Jordan Valley for a power grab, and Lot's Sodom king and their surrounding communities, they fight back, but they are defeated and they are taken captive. Not only are their possessions taken, but the people are taken, presumably to be sold into slavery or to be taken as war prisoners. And their biggest mistake in all of this is that Lot is taken up in this. And there is one person who escapes. This person stumbles across Abram's camp. Abram is given the news that Lot and the others have been captured. And Lot, being his nephew, is very important to Abram. Abram then gathers his men. Verse 14, when Abram heard that his kinsmen had been taken captive, he led forth his trained men, born in his house, 318 of them. And so that gives you some idea of how many men and women must have been in Abram's household, and how wealthy Abram must have been, almost like a sheik there in that day. Verse 15, he divided his forces against them by night, he and his servants, and defeated them and pursued them to Hobah, north of Damascus. Then he brought back all the possessions, and also brought back his kinsman Lot with his possessions and the women and the people. So he goes in pursuit. He defeats the previously victorious kings. He rescues primarily Lot, but also consequently all the others, and then all their possessions. Then we are introduced to this mysterious character just out of nowhere, it seems. And we're told at the end of verse 16, Abram blessed by Melchizedek. Melchizedek. Abram comes in here, and Abram is confronted with this person at the end of verse 16, going into verse 17. After his return, defeat from Chedorlaomer and the kings who were with him, the king of Sodom went out to meet him in the valley of Shavah, that is the king's valley, and Melchizedek, king of Salem, brought out bread and wine. He was a priest of the Most High God. We don't know anything else about Melchizedek. We don't know where he comes from. We don't know anything about his background. We don't have any of his writing, any of his teaching, but he is presented as a very honorable character. And Abram is presented here with Melchizedek and the king of Sodom, and he reacts very differently to these two different men. This first man, Melchizedek, Abram is blessed by him, verse 19. And he blessed him, that is, Melchizedek blesses Abram. And the blessing flows downhill. The principle of blessings in that time was that the greater person was to bless the lesser person. And Melchizedek, as great as Abram was, Melchizedek blesses Abram. And he blessed him and said, "Blessed be Abram by the Most High, by God Most High, possessor of heaven and earth, and blessed be God Most High, who has delivered your enemies into your hands." And then Abram's response to Melchizedek's blessing is that he pays a tithe. This is the first time that we see a tithe paid to anyone here in Scripture, and it is Abram giving an homage, an offering of respect, a tenth to this mysterious character, Melchizedek. And then, having done that, we understand how honorable this Melchizedek character must have been. Melchizedek was the kind of person that would demand respect even from someone like Abram. And Abram shows that respect to him. Abram honors him. And we find out later in Hebrews chapter 7 that this Melchizedek character, mysterious and shadowy though he may be, serves as a prefigure to Jesus Christ. And the author of Hebrews draws multiple parallels in Hebrews chapter 7. Then Abram turns and faces the king of Sodom. The king of Sodom offers some terms of peace with Abram. Abram refuses to take any kind of payment except for what his men have earned. He lets them receive their possessions or their reward, their payment for going into battle as contractors, in essence, going and trying to secure and free the captives. Now, from this chapter, there are four takeaways that I want to bring to your attention. The first is that there are world events and local events, just events of history that affect God's people. They affect us with sickness or with prosperity or with danger. World events affect God's people too. Also understand that even unbelievers are sometimes fortunate to be around the other people who actually believe and are receiving God's blessings, and that sometimes spills over to those who are in proximity with believers. And so even unbelievers are blessed when around God's people. Then no one but God secured Abraham's success. And understand, above all, it's not a takeaway that you have to do anything about, but keep in your mind this mysterious Melchizedek. Melchizedek is going to turn out to be very important to us, but it will be many centuries later, and in the much later part of the Bible, when we get to the book of Hebrews, and we are looking back on the ministry of Christ and how the author of Hebrews compares the two. Now look, this God of Abraham is a great and wonderful God, and I ask that the God of Abraham will bless you and keep you and cause his face to shine upon you and give you peace.